Welcome to the RUH Woman podcast. Thank you so much for being here. Today we are going to be talking about boundaries and why having boundaries can seem something like it's really threatening to have boundaries, and people that have boundaries, there's something wrong with them. I want to talk about that specific mindset and uncover that. And the thing that I've kind of thought about when it comes to that is that for people that may have a problem with that, obviously people who have a problem with you having boundaries for whatever it is, right? It's hard to say exactly what the problem is, right, in that context, but we know that they don't like that they can't walk past a certain line, right? But essentially, people that have problems with boundaries are not able to practice boundaries themselves or practice it very well, or may not even have the courage to do so, or maybe even how to do that. We're not really taught about boundaries as much. And essentially, boundaries are really just a way to tell others and yourself how you want to be treated and how you should be approached. For example, I think one good way to think about it for us as women is we have boundaries as Muslim women with other men, right? With men in general, right? We we don't necessarily talk to them as openly as we would with women, or maybe interact with them. For some Muslim women, it may be different than others, but in general, we don't hug people from the opposite gender. So it's just a type of boundary, right, in that sense. So it's easier for us to understand that type of boundary, right, where there's a gender type of interaction, and you're telling men, like, this is how I want to be treated, or you can't walk past this certain line, right? And I feel like that's easier to do that, right? And I think it's because it's a little more natural. But the boundaries that when it comes to another woman decides to make comments about you or your life and how you live, right? Something we all experience. Setting a boundary that I never want to hear that again, or you cannot talk to me like that, or make judgments about my life. That sounds really harsh, but there's in essence something wrong with that, right? If we can say things in a civil and kind and assertive way, we don't need to be nasty, right? You don't need to throw fire with fire, but it's just setting a standard for yourself, right? And if you think about it, the more we focus on our own self-improvement, right? And we genuinely are on that journey with sincerity, it's a light that spreads and that inspires others, right? Like, if a woman has these qualities, and I as a woman, I admire her, right? Because I'm like, wow, I just love that. Like, I just love how she carries herself, how she speaks, and how she's really improved on her life and all the work that she's done. I really appreciate that. And I want to take that on, right? So think about it this way too, that it's really an act of service for yourself and for others, because others will see that. Even if somebody they don't particularly like you, but you set a boundary, right? I'm sure in the back of their head, or even subconsciously, they like that, right? Because they're like, oh, I want that, or it's just something that they admire. It's just, so something to think about in that sense, like a different perspective, that these acts of love that we show ourselves are also an act of service for others as well. Because you're setting a standard, and it's not easy to do. It takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of fighting against the thoughts in your head and the imposter syndrome and all of that. And boundaries are one of those things where I'm going to say this a lot with a lot of things, but it is like a muscle. You have to train it. You have to work out for it to get stronger, and you have to keep doing it over and over again, and it'll get easier over time. Sometimes it feels like you're starting from step one, and then, and you're, having to fill that cup again, but that's just life. But in general, boundaries are a good thing. And it basically shows you how you want to be treated and how you should be spoken to, and how people shouldn't get out of line. Because I think nobody wants to be a doormat, and nobody wants to be called a doormat either, right? A doormat is someone who is people pleasing, and they just can get stepped on, right? And like, people don't really value or acknowledge their feelings, right? And they won't really stand up for themselves. And that's not what we want to be or who we want to be. And we've been taught to be nice, right? Instead of kind. And the difference is that when you're kind, you have a good heart, you have good intentions, you have sincerity, but you have self-respect and standards and manners, and you will not let anyone walk over you or those that you love, right? And you stand up for yourself. Being nice is a more, and I know people don't necessarily use those words intentionally, but I think there's a difference between the two. And we say, oh, she's a really nice person, I really try to change it to kind. And growing up, it's like, oh, she's really nice. It's like a compliment. But, like, I don't want to be nice. I want to be kind, So, and this is something that, again, it goes back to like, it carries on through other generations of modeling behavior, right? So your children see it, right? Other people see it. And why not be an inspiration for other people, right? When you're focusing on yourself. Not that that's for the reason why we do it. That's not the intention, right? The intention is, of course, to become better versions of ourselves so that we can be that polished mirror, right? Our hearts can be polished, so then we can reflect that light, the light of Allah, right? So if we don't work on polishing ourselves and our hearts and our intentions, right? Like, for example, if we keep the house dirty, or if you don't clean the mirror or clean your dishes, right? You have a dirty glass. Nobody wants to drink out of that. You can't see anything clearly from it. You don't know what's inside. Like, it's a mess. And it's just the nature of life to focus on cleanliness and purification. And that's part of our journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is one of those examples where having boundaries is necessary. And you can even have boundaries. And when we think about boundaries, sometimes we think about people that don't like us, or that we don't like, or we just don't get along with, or don't vibe with. But it's also with people that we love too. Because, for example, let's say I am talking to a close cousin, and she is overwhelmed with life, and she's very stressed out. And let's say I'm venting about something right now, and I'm also feeling the same way, but she just does not have it in her, just in that moment, to really listen to anything. And she just wants to get off the phone and take a nap or whatever it is. And she can sit there and listen. She can choose to do whatever she'd like, right? She can sit there and listen to me and go on and on and on. Like, it's just a hypothetical story. And she's really not feeling good, And I'm just really focused on like what I'm worried about right now. Setting a boundary would be like, hey, I really can't, like, I sympathize with you and I'm really sorry. How about we talk about this later? I think I really just need to take some time to just disconnect and just take a nap. I have a lot going on. And that's just a really subtle, gentle, kind reminder that your capacity is really low in the moment, And that was the boundary, right? Like, that's what it is. That's all it takes, is just speaking up and saying something for yourself. And it takes practice, right? In certain contexts, it's easier than others, right? Boundaries can also be shown not verbally, but through your body language and how you carry yourself, or through the moments of silence, which are the most dangerous and powerful ways, I guess, to set a boundary, because those are the most uncomfortable, and it could be for you and for the other person. For example, let's say somebody but may not necessarily be close to, makes a comment about, I don't know, let's just think of something typical that people unfortunately can't keep their mouths shut about. How much weight you gained after having a baby. The typical, like, we can't get out of this rut of just commenting on other women's bodies. And they say like, wow, you used to be so skinny and you've put on some weight. And it's like, okay, thanks, thanks, Sana. Sorry for the Sanas out there, but I'm just using a name. But like, thanks, Sana, for that comment that I was so unaware about my own body, like, thanks for that comment. Like, I did not know that I'm no longer a size medium, So, and Sana makes that comment a lot, or even if the first time she made that comment and it bugged you, right? You have two options. You actually have a few options. It depends on how you carry yourself. One is you could just be like, chuckle through like what we normally do, right? Like, haha, yeah, I know, right? Like, it's just, it's struggle. It's a struggle with moms, and Sana herself, mind you, also has 2 kids. Okay. And, you could just kind of just chuckle it off and, or you can be silent. That's one option, and look at her and let her kind of reflect upon what she just said. In that in itself will make her uncomfortable. And maybe it'll seem rude to others. But the thing is, what about what she said? Was that not rude, right? It's just a way of communicating in that sense. And sometimes silence is the best answer, right? And that is a response. And you can just stare at her, see how uncomfortable she feels for a few seconds. Sometimes all it takes is literally 2 seconds. And then just walk away. And she'll understand right there and then that you did not like that comment. And of course, nobody likes that comment, but you communicated it, right? Through your body language. And she may not ever say it again. Third is you can be very vocal about it, and there's different ways of saying it. And I think it depends on who you're talking to. And some forms of communication work better than others, or the approach and the tones that we're using. But you can say something like, I find it so interesting why we find it okay to comment about other women's bodies, especially fellow moms. And it seems so harsh, right? Just saying it in the moment. But the thing is, if we don't say it, it's just going to happen. And then that could be said to somebody else. Do you know what I mean? So the cycle just keeps going on and on and on. And we don't want that. And so boundaries are just one of those things that are healthy. And it's something that we should all have in healthy relationships and with people that are maybe our acquaintances or strangers or whatever it is. It's just really another form of communicating. Take it this way. And it's a form of showing yourself, honoring yourself as well, right? And others, like let's say somebody is gossiping about somebody else in the community and you're not the type to gossip, right? And you can walk away. That's one option. But you can also kind of set a reminder, like, hey, we probably shouldn't be gossiping about others. I mean, anything, right? And the Prophet ﷺ mentions that, if there's something wrong that's going on, you should do 3 things. 1, you should try to stop it with your hands if possible, right? 2, you should be vocal about it. And 3, if you can't do any of that, the lowest of iman is feel bad in your heart about it, right? And we want to be above that. We shouldn't just feel bad. Feeling bad, alhamdulillah, is a blessing. It's a good thing. It's a sign of iman. But we should also see, the thing is, if there's something wrong going on, we need to do our best to stop it. Now, there's ways of doing it, right? There's emotional intelligence. There's approaches of how we deal with people in situations. But now is the time to stop the wrong, right? And the best way we can do it is within our own, by starting with ourselves first, within our own home and our families, and then our communities, right? This is how we make change, incremental change over time. And you never know, like, from doing that, how it could affect somebody, or like a chain reaction. So in essence, inshallah, you're helping others and protecting them from like committing bad deeds, and then also like getting good, right? And we're not trying to be the haram police over here, or like the hijabi police, or having comments like this, oh, this is just, you're going to go to hell for this, and this is not how we do things. And like, no, we all know that there's an approach to do things. It's good to remind each other, but we need to do it with the prophetic way, right? We need to do it in a way with dignity and honor. But to not, and to just to be quiet when wrong is going on, and to yourself, right, is that's a sin, right? Like, Allah does not want us to harm ourselves, to burden ourselves. And if we just let others walk all over us, what good are we doing, you know? So I would say that is my take on boundaries. And it's not easy, but I think it definitely helps, and it makes life easier and a little less stressful once you have communicated those boundaries. Maybe we can do another episode of like scenarios, but we'll see. If you enjoyed this episode, please do subscribe and share, and check me out if you're on Spotify. Please do give me a rating, and also check me out on YouTube, RUH Woman, RUHWOMAN, and definitely do check out my shop and support me through the products that I have designed and created at shopruh.com, shopruh.com. I design everything from home decor, stickers, apparel, and I recently launched my second hijab collection. Please go and check it out. Every penny that you spend on my shop helps me create more content, and it supports a stay-at-home mom who decided to stay at home and pause professional life and focus on creating and being creative and raising a child. So I really appreciate the likes and subscribes, and inshallah we can slowly grow from where we're at now. And honestly, like, I don't know how many subscribers I have right now. I'm still very in the beginning, but every time I see some positive interaction, I'm like, okay, alhamdulillah. And everything adds up, and honestly, it really means a lot, and I really appreciate it. So thank you so much for being here. I'll catch you next time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.